Many of you probably know that Tracy and I sowed the Proving Grounds 1, and we're focusing all our hunting and habitat management efforts on the Proving Grounds 2. Now, we had owned a good bit of the Proving Grounds 2. I just candidly didn't have the budget to do all the work I wanted to do on the Proving Grounds 1 and be dolling up the Proving Grounds 2 at the same time. So for a bit over a year, almost a year, we've been focused really intensely on the Proving Grounds 2. Again, we had a food plot or two and some trails and roads, but we hadn't hunted here a lot. So it's been a really fun year, and I want to share what we've done and kind of give you an update on that habitat and my forecast for the hunting season. We hit the ground running, and we felled over 100 acres of cedars so far. Matter of fact, we did that as soon as we made the change. Got a crew in here, happy to share the name of the contractor if you want. They hit the ground running, felled all those cedars, and we did a bunch of fire this spring. Matter of fact, we burned those acres and some additional acres. So out of our property, we burned almost 200 acres this spring, which resulted in a huge amount of native vegetation coming on. And that was a good thing because we don't have that many acres of food plots here, and it was a wicked drought this spring. Now it's green right now, and we've had 6 inches of rain in August. We couldn't buy a heavy dew throughout much of the growing season this summer, and our food plots held up. The blends did good, but that native vegetation really helped those food plots from just being browsed to the dirt. Combination of the food plots and native vegetation, even in a drought year, I gotta tell you, the bucks at the Proving Grounds 2 look doggone good. As a matter of fact, I would say we're about as good already as we were on the Proving Grounds 1. We don't have that quite just super high top end, but our average bucks are as good, if not better. When I say average, I'm looking at antler size for 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds and yearlings. We haven't had the Proving Grounds 2 as long, so we don't have that top-end age class as we had at the Proving Grounds 1 with 20 years of history of passing up bucks. Previous people here had harvested bucks, but we're building that age structure 1 year at a time. That's as fast as you can go. And for each age class, I'm super impressed with the antler development given the work we've done, and it was a wicked drought year right during the part of prime antler growth. Flip side of growing antlers is growing fawns. They're at the same time and require many of the same nutrients. And there's a pile of fawns at the Proving Grounds 2. Daniel and I are already loading up on some doe tags in Missouri. You can buy additional doe tags for archery season because we need to take several does off the Proving Grounds 2 to keep that balance. Right now we have more food than deer, and I want it to keep that way. If we drop that doe harvest for a few years, all of a sudden we're having more deer than food. It's tough to create more food than deer, especially in timber country, if you get behind the game. So you can bet our primes are going to be flinging a lot of arrows at female deer this fall. Seeing a bunch of fawns tells me there's good conditions to grow, good antlers per age class. It's always per age class. But in addition to that, you may recall we removed almost 140 nest predators off the Proving Grounds 2 this past trapping season. That averaged a predator for about every 6 acres. And the results, well, again, we've improved the habitat. That's always part of that factor. But we've had a massive turkey hatch here. There are poults all over. We coming and going, Daniel, Evan, and I driving in and out of the office here, which is on the Proving Grounds 2. We see poults almost every day. It's fun to meet in the morning. Hey, did you see those poults coming in this morning? Our moultrie cameras are loaded up with poults, not just like, a couple of hens and 10 or 20 poults in one place. There's poults all throughout the Proving Grounds 2. 2 years from now, there should be a lot of gobbling here. Those are observations, but we can put some metrics in here in a little bit because I did some looking, and last year the average doe whole body weight, now this is mature does, anything 2.5 years old and older, was about 106 pounds. I mean, that's not starving, but it's not big. And I right now feel that we will have an increase in our average doe body weight. I like to look at whole weights of does because bucks vary so much between, pre-rut, rut, post-rut. Those weights can change so much, where doe rates stay a bit more even throughout the hunting season. There's a lot of data hunters can and do collect at the skin and shed. Some don't collect any. I understand you're hunting public land, you're field dressing out in the field. But if you're hunting on private land, or you've got a place like our little shop here to bring deer back in, keep that meat clean and process the deer right here, collecting that whole body weight is a great way to get a trend of how your deer herd is tracking. Any one deer doesn't matter. You might kill that big old butterbean deer that, just genetically is just a fat old pig out there. But looking at weights per age class, or with does, 2.5 years old and older, mature does, tracking that year after year is a great way to see if your herd is trending up in overall health or trending down in overall health. And that's just one indicator of, do I have more groceries than deer, or if I flipped around and I have more deer than groceries and my body weights are dropping. Antler size per age class could be another indicator of herd health, but candidly, we don't harvest very many, if any, younger age class bucks, and we don't harvest a lot of bucks, not as many as does. We typically harvest 5 or 6 does for every buck. And we do that because our neighbors tend to harvest more bucks than does, so we're balancing that out. So buck data is fine, but it's almost always a smaller sample size. I contend it should be a smaller sample size. So we focus on does, and they're a really good indicator of what's happening in your habitat and herd. We created one new 4-acre food plot this spring, and I mean, time the dozers get in there and the track hoes, it's like it's been disked 50,000 times and compacted. I didn't have much hope for that plot, especially given it was a drought year, and I mean, as soon as the yellow equipment moved off, we're in there planting. And I am shocked, that stuff's waist tall or taller on me right now, deer in there every day, and that's just a testimony to the magic of a good blend, those plants interacting versus a monoculture. Our new plot, we call it Big Pond, has done far better, given it's brand new like a parking lot, and it's been a drought, than I ever expected. That's just a testimony to the power of blends, and we added a lot of food that wasn't here on the Proving Grounds too. When we started this whole journey, I felt I could improve the Proving Grounds 2 much faster than the 20+ years I spent on the Proving Grounds 1. And one big change in my thinking or my techniques is I used to plant monocultures, a single species, maybe beans or brassicas or whatever. And I can remember how slow it was improving the soil, and I had to add, fertilizer, use a lot of herbicide or stuff like that. So that's been a big change in what I've learned through the years, and I'm really excited about the results. Along the lines of food plots, we've created with hand tools several Hidey food plots. And I love hunting Hidey food plots. You can put those, 50 yards, 75 yards away from where you've made a lot of cover. Maybe you felled cedars or did TSI in hardwoods. And when you got it really close and you've thought it through, you don't just locate one willy-nilly, but you're thinking, okay, predominant wind is this way, or under these wind directions, I can come in here, the buck's likely to be bedded here, and I can get there without alerting the deer. So when I started Proving Grounds 1, I kind of made Hidey food plots where there was an opening in timber or a flat spot or whatever. Now I really think through exactly where I'm going to locate it, not just from the plant growing point of view, but how I can hunt that, because the Hidey food plot's mission is to get the hunter and the deer within 30 yards or less. Same with placing some Redneck blinds. Of course, again, newer property. We put up a couple Redneck blinds this summer. Man, Daniel and I spent a lot of time, not just, in this general area, but I mean, if we put it a yard this way or over here 20 yards, what's our view? What gives us the maximum view in the areas we wish to cover? So we're going a lot different direction than at the Proving Grounds 1, and that everything is based on that knowledge base we developed. Trial and error. Remember, the best school is the school of hard knocks. I never had a college class that said, hey, this is how to place a deer stand or a deer blind. I never had that class. So I feel that we've jump-started this project, and we're probably already like we were 5 or 8 years in the Proving Grounds 1. I believe we made that progress in the first year of Proving Grounds 2. A really fun part of switching to the Proving Grounds 2 is learning the property, learning how deer move, and one of the big tools we've used for that is the Moultrie mobile cameras. Having those cell cameras out there and very inexpensive way to scout. we moved them a lot. We didn't just set them and hang them. We moved them a lot that first year to really learn how deer are using the property under different conditions, acorns, no acorns, dry, wet, whatever, really shifting them around. I think we'll be much better hunters this year because we've learned a lot. We've learned the property, and just as importantly, from a hunting point of view, we've learned how deer use the property. And those cameras were a big tool in that, being able to scout, you know, 5 places or 10 places versus 1 place, and you had to walk in there and stand it up and bust deer. Now, I love to walk, those of y'all know me, and I've walked this place stem to stern many times now, but using those cameras has been a big tool. And that goes even further because with that app, right now this time of year, I'm going back and looking at our historical data right here on this property. When were deer using this ridge or this area, or what were the conditions deer were moving here? And having that data free, I used to, not use cell cameras, go on my computer, I'd save these pictures and go on there, and inevitably I'd mess up my notes or something and data would be less than desirable. But with that system, it's made me look a lot smarter, and it's much easier for me to learn the deer herd. There'll be some changes this year. Last year we had a bumper crop of acorns. One of those when you're walking to your stand of dark, you might slip because you're sliding on all those marbles on the ground. This year, a combination of late frost, drought, a lot of factors, there are not many white or red oak acorns. And the acorns I've seen, I have my burris out studying treetops all the time last few weeks or so. Acorns are really small, what we call drought acorns. They didn't develop fully. I'm sure deer will eat some. And that's one reason deer are pouring into our plots right now. Of course, the green cover blends, the summer blends usually have milo in there, and those milo heads are just getting right for deer. And those bucks are pouring in there because this time of year, they're shifting from needing protein to carbohydrates. That's another advantage of a blend. You can have stuff in there that deer seek early, mid, and late season, whether that's summer season or hunting season. So we're able to really monitor bucks now and see where they are and get them scoped out, see what's going on. Not having acorns this year is going to change some of those patterns. So I feel we're much better equipped to handle that shift than we were the first year, but still probably throw us a curveball or two when we're out there trying to hunt this fall. All this talk is pretty cheap. I'm a big believer in practitioners versus book knowledge. So book knowledge is important, love to read, but practitioners tend to, get their elbows dirty, bust their knee every now and then and learn from those experiences. So let's see how we do this season. And there's no hiding it when you film every week, so you can follow along. We need to take several does off here. I'll be probably looking for a nanny the first afternoon. Missouri season opens September 15th. The conditions are anywhere favorable. I'm sure Daniel and I will be up a tree somewhere, different locations. And also trying to get some more meat in the freezer. I'm about depleted right now. It's looking pretty empty. So we're going to take a lot of does. We're looking for a couple of mature bucks, 2 or 3 or 4 mature bucks. And it's going to be a great season. We're throwing it out on the line here so you can follow along and see if we've learned as much as we think we have and how that harvest ends up throughout the season. Constantly learning is really important for staying healthy, mentally, physically, and other ways. Learning new habitat techniques or learning a new property and how deer use it is really fun and stimulating to me anyway. But even more important than that is learning the Creator's will for our life and how we should apply it daily. That changes throughout the stages of our life. So I encourage you to be quiet and seek His will daily. Thanks for watching Growing Deer.